Chair. I just want to put on the record that where voluntary assisted dying is legislated for, actually the vast majority of people that will avail of voluntary assisted dying will actually go to palliative care. That's fact. And I think they should be, you know, they should be complementary in some ways, where somebody that's in a palliative care setting or doesn't choose to go to palliative care should obviously have the choice of voluntary assisted dying. I think that's very important. And I think we also recognise that even though modern medicine and people are living longer, not all modern medicine can ameliorate certain conditions. That's fact. And there are certain situations where, yeah, palliative care is very, very good in this country. Obviously, we need more investment. But there are situations, and you will admit, that palliative care does not ameliorate somebody's suffering. That's fact. And in them circumstances, then I think somebody in that situation should be able to avail of assisted dying. Just in relation to the Irish Hospice Foundation, and again, thanks for your statement. And like David, I had an experience with my very kind of close relative in relation to hospice care. It was an amazing experience, you know, even though it was a very, very sad occasion, but it was a good experience, as in, you know, how the person was cared for and how the person kind of passed away and so forth. And, you know, that was, that kind of, it mitigated the kind of sadness, you know, in some ways and so forth. But, and in your kind of statement, you know, you say that obviously certain things need to be funding, and so obviously there's deficits and all that, and I understand that. And preparing for one's death, I think it's important as well. And obviously having this discussion, even though it's difficult, is very, very important in relation to that. But in your opinion, if voluntary assisted dying was legislated for, would that kind of change the dynamics of palliative care, you know, in Ireland? Or would it change the dynamic about actually talking about, you know, one's mortality, one's, you know, ending, where they have actually a choice to say, look, I don't want to go through that particular period. I can have a choice. Some people will say that will kind of fundamentally change, you know, healthcare in Ireland. I think that's, I don't believe that. I think it's, again, it's a right of a human being to have that kind of choice. So just in relation to them number of questions, if you could comment on that.
Thank you, Deputy Kenny. In relation to, I guess, the Irish Hospice Foundation, as I said, you know, we work towards the best end of life and bereavement care for all. So in terms of if the committee was to make a recommendation to legislate differently or for a change in legislation, the Irish Hospice Foundation would continue to advocate for the best end of life care. So it would be the individual's choice as to whether they decide on assisted dying. But from our perspective, our role would still be to ensure that everybody who is end of life and who is bereaved would be afforded with the right supports at the right time. So our position wouldn't change. In terms of your follow-on question, the palliative care and that approach, that's something that wouldn't be for us to answer, because we're not directly our colleagues here in terms of the individual hospitals. How that would impact them is really a
I could ask that question to Una if she could answer.
Yeah, I mean, I do feel that it would impact greatly on the provision of healthcare. I mean, our position is that we don't support assisted dying, and so we would not, like, it would put a lot of healthcare professionals working in palliative care under a lot of pressure. We would obviously.
Why?
Well, because we don't advocate for it, and so
but obviously, if you didn't want to, you could have a conscientious objection to that.
Yeah,
yeah, you could do that.
Oh, absolutely. But it would change the relationship with us and our patients. It would change the journey that we're travelling with them on. And I understand your point about their autonomy, but when we think about one person's autonomy, we have to think how that affects the treatment of other people. So if one person wants to choose to die, then we have to figure how we protect other people who don't want that. Yeah. And hospices, and I do know that in Canada that a number of hospices do not provide.
And that's their prerogative.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And the vast majority of people will never ever want to avail of assisted dying, even if they meet the criteria.
Yes,
never, never in any circumstance.
And I have looked at some data from the Oregon data that says that a number of people who actually were approved to participate in assisted dying actually did not. Yeah. Their time passed and they chose not to. But I think our focus is always on quality of life and living. And that's where we in palliative care really work with trying to do the best quality of life and living, and that we understand that at the end of many illnesses that people do die, but we support them through their living up to that point rather than planning for their death.